What is up, podcast, and welcome to the Race Place Podcast Network. We have another amazing show for you today. Today on the show, we have Mr. Roger Jr. Now, the other day, Roger Jr., a couple months ago, I was actually interviewing this painter, this Peruvian painter, and his name was Roger Jr., your dad.
That's right.
I was over at his pad, and the cool thing about going to an artist's home is there's going to be art. But with your dad, it's everywhere. It's all over the walls. It's in the living room. But there's a specific wall there that's dedicated to the family, and it has a picture. Of course, it has his self-portrait on it. It has a picture of his wife, your mom. It has a picture of your sister. And then there's this Jesus-like looking, and he said that, not me, but he said there's this Jesus-like looking image of my son, and he showed it to me, and it's a picture of you in this cool white shirt and this kind of killer look with your long hair and everything like that. He's like, that's my son, and he told me, okay, that's freaking dope. So I got to meet him. I got to meet his family, talk about you guys, his family, get to know him, get to know his history. Get to know how he got into art and his love and his passion for art. But he didn't tell me that Roger Jr. is a freaking guitarist, a damn good guitarist. So the other day, I follow Roger crazily because I'm like into art and I'm into music and everything like that. But I love the way Roger paints. So I'm following him, of course, on Instagram, and I see him put up a story of you jamming on this guitar, and what caught my eye, not just the killer Steve Vai Megadeth jams that were going down, but the type of guitar you play. The type of guitar you play, because I've seen guitars for years, since I was 16 years old, but never have I seen a guitar quite like this. First of all, the head is completely chopped off.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no tuning keys. And the neck is bigger than any guitar I've ever seen. How many strings are on this guitar?
8.
This is an 8-string guitar.
8 strings,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the tuning pegs are actually right here on the bridge.
Oh, okay.
So the lack of head, is so it's not as heavy, and it's easier to play. Easier on the wrist and that kind of thing. So it's generally, I'm sure like the first makings of these guitars, they were pretty heavy. And so they decided, let's take, because is it heavy because of the neck? Because there's so much more neck to it? Not really. For an 8-string guitar, it's pretty light. Yeah, you want to hold it?
Okay, but before, let me just look. I don't want to take it all the way out, but dude, it's pretty light, but it is heavier than a regular guitar. So they took off the head to make it a little bit lighter?
Yeah, on the neck part. So, a lot of people complain about the wrist hurting, especially for 8-string guitars. Having extra strings, you got more tuning pegs. So they design guitars these days a lot more without the head, and it makes just for a more comfortable, lighter guitar.
That's freaking awesome, man. That's crazy. It's a totally different looking guitar, and that's what caught my eye. It's a very unique guitar. It's got 8 strings, not 6. Does it have more of the bassier ranges? Is that what it is?
Right. So the regular 6 would be down here, and then you've got basically a bass string down there.
Nice. That's freaking dreamy, because when you play guitar, you're always like, when you're playing, like, you said this in your Instagram, I'm a certified bedroom guitarist. So I remember many years playing in my bedroom, playing guitar, and hoping and trying, wishing and hearing in my head that bassy sound. So with this, you get both, right?
Right.
That's incredible. So you're able to do much more with this guitar, having more strings, having to lower into it. By having a guitar setup like this with so many strings, what is it besides the bass? We'll show the people what it allows you to do.
So on a regular guitar, you can play the classic chords, but people who are into like heavier styles of metal, death metal,
Oh,
they usually have to down tune. So a guitar like this lets you have the best of both worlds. You can play some of the classics, you know. Not that I know any, but then you can still have your cake and eat it too. You can do some really,
crazy,
super chuggy stuff.
Yeah. So it's giving you that heavier kind of metal sound. I remember like Limp Bizkit, I think it was back in the day, and some of the other bands were trying to like down tune to detune or something like that.
Exactly.
And or would have like a 7-string guitar to try to get to that sound. This gives you all of it without having to adjust the tuning.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's
you can have a wider range in tuning, basically.
That's crazy. Do you where do you get a guitar like this? Is this something that you can buy at Guitar Center, or is it something custom made?
In this day and age, it's becoming more widely available at places like Guitar Center with limited stock, sure, but I am starting to see these more in more stores physically. But for the last few years, these purchases have been online.
So you got this online?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow,
yeah.
That's crazy, man. So this type of guitar, it's not custom, but it is certainly rare, and it's like you said, it's starting to show up in the Guitar Center and stuff like that. So that's pretty awesome. Because there's so many strings. Would this be a type of guitar that a beginner could just pick up and start learning, or is it gonna make them a little bit harder if they pick this one up first?
That's a good question. I mean, if a beginner is inspired, by something super brutal, something of the death metal persuasion, I wouldn't discourage them from starting off with something like this. Let them mess around, get used to the kind of world that they're interested in. Me personally, I got started the classic way, just a dingy old 6-string acoustic, and then I worked my way up.
Have you always, when you were starting out, how old were you when you started playing?
Maybe 13.
13?
Yeah, 13 or 14. I was halfway through 8th grade when it just clicked for me.
Awesome. That's about what time when I started playing. Was metal always your thing, or were you from back then?
Well, my dad grew me up on a lot of like classic rock. So
yeah, I know your dad's into Pink Floyd and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so probably the most metal thing I had heard growing up was maybe, I don't know, Zeppelin or Van Halen, you know what I mean?
Nice.
Maybe the rock part of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
But in middle school, I started, experimenting, getting into some stuff like Black Sabbath and Slipknot and stuff like that. So Black Sabbath, I think, was definitely one of those things that like pushed me to try out guitar.
Oh yeah, I mean, who doesn't love Black Sabbath? It's the greatest. I think it was Tony Iommi, is that the guitar player?
Right.
Tony Iommi, Ozzy Osbourne, all the greats. Back then, that was metal. Led Zeppelin, Ozzy Osbourne, in the 70s, that's when it was starting to happen. And then, of course, as you get into the 80s, you have all the hardcore stuff coming out. But Black Sabbath is the core, the foundation of heavy metal for me, especially coming out of Led Zeppelin and all that stuff like that. Who doesn't love Black Sabbath? I mean, when you learn guitar, you're learning Iron Man, you're learning Paranoid. When I was a punk rock singer, I always wanted to sing Paranoid all the time and sing that all at all the parties and stuff like that. So it's definitely a band that doesn't stop. And then Slipknot, my son listens to Slipknot. He loves Slipknot. It's an awesome band.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's probably, I remember getting into Slipknot is when my parents got scared, you know what I mean? They saw me bring home one of the CDs, and then they took my ass back to the mall to return it. But it was things like that definitely piqued my interest, because I was just used to like classic rock and some semi-heavy stuff, but then Slipknot came in with this aggressivity that changed the game,
Yeah, definitely. Where do you think it comes from? Because you go from Led Zeppelin, of course, into Black Sabbath, into what we have like my days, Megadeth, Metallica, thrash metal, Suicidal Tendencies. That's the type of stuff I was listening to back in the day. And then you start to get into, then I think somebody like the Nine Inch Nails starts coming around. Somebody like Ministry back in the day, sort of like an industrial type sound. Do you think some of those influences, I don't know Slipknot too well, do you think some of those influences kind of rubbed off on Slipknot? Or am I way off?
No, I definitely think some of that industrial stuff made its way into their sound. They definitely incorporated it, you know, with their use of samples, and I know they had like a dude who spun the records and their shit, but I honestly couldn't say much more on that.
Yeah, it's just crazy because it's they have a DJ, but they also have a heavy percussive sound. Like they have their own percussionists and stuff like that. And then it's around the same time you got guys like Korn too. Korn's happening with their hard stuff like that. Are you at that time in high school? Are you starting to listen to some of these influences?
Personally, I was never too big on Korn, but it was still, you know, in that same field of stuff. You know, after Slipknot, I moved on to things like Children of Bodom and Metallica.
Nice.
I'm sure everyone is familiar with Metallica.
Nice, yeah, definitely. Everybody knows Metallica. Children of Bodom, I don't know that one, but I'll look it up. That's freaking awesome. So in those days, you're learning guitar. Are you gigging at that time? Or are you just fiddling around with it? What are you doing back in high school?
I did start a band in high school, but it took me a couple years. It was a lot of just, I always liked to write music. So writing my own songs took precedence over learning other people's songs, other bands' songs. And probably about midway through my sophomore year, I was able to form a band, and then we started practicing, and then junior year came along and the shows started coming in a little increments, but yeah.
Nice. So your writing style at that time, was it mostly the music? Were there words incorporated to it, or was it just mostly the melodic pieces and the sound?
A little bit of both. Mostly more music than lyrics, but yeah, I did get my start also, you know, writing lyrics and pretending I could sing.
Nice. I mean, that's when you have a band. There has to be somebody that's the creative, the creative aspect of that band who kind of gives it that creative direction. Were you that direction at that time?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, so you were writing the music, writing some of the words. I mean, anybody who's in a band wants a guy like this who can write their own music, because there are people that can play guitar. And you can go to a bar and you can play Creedence Clearwater Revival, you can play Pink Floyd, you can play Freebird all day long, and it's freaking awesome that you know that stuff and that talent. But to write your own music, I think it's just a whole nother level. It's like you have this true passion for this instrument, and you're learning it. At the same time, you're writing and creating your own sound.
Yeah, that's right. And while, you know, I did collaborate with my friends back then in writing music, I definitely was always the guy with the vision.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Definitely not taking away from the other guys, but yeah, everybody's creating, and you know, you have that writing thing that happens within the band, and people are you know, contributing words and bass lines and drum pieces. It all makes a solid band. That's what the great bands do. How do you get from playing in bands, playing a six string? Let's go to where did you find or discover this 8-string guitar?
Honestly, this didn't come around until maybe 2016, 2015.
Wow.
So I stuck to 6-string for a long time, and what caused me to make the jump was that maybe for the last, 10 years of playing guitar, I would always downtune. I was always going for, you know, that low tuning that I can get here on this 8-string, but on a 6-string.
Yeah.
And eventually I just thought to myself, why not just make the jump and have it all?
Have it all.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. When I was playing guitar, I don't even think that existed. Like, you just had the 6-string and that's it.
Yeah.
And then maybe you try to do some like Jimi Hendrix stuff with the thumb on top or something like that to get kind of the tones, but there was nothing. I dreamed of a lower end on the top, and that didn't even exist when I was playing guitar. they had started having the 7 strings and stuff like that, but by then I had already stopped playing guitar and I was in the percussion and stuff like that. But it's a dream. There's a guy, what's his name, Turner or something like that. He plays something like this where he plays all the bass notes and everything. It's freaking incredible what you can do. It kind of it frees you in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, having more range, more options, it makes it for definitely a more interesting experience.
Crazy.
You know, having the limitations of just a 6-string means you got to pick one or the other. Right. When you can have both, you can get a little weird if you want.
Talk about a little weird. So I'm getting into this guy's. I'm learning that this guy plays guitar. I see him on Instagram, and then I go right to his link tree. He's got a link tree. I start to listen to his tunes on Spotify. Freaking incredible what I hear. This is a sound like Steve Vai meets Megadeth in a dark alley, and then they shoot into space somewhere. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't know. Does that sound about right to you?
I'm happy with that description. Definitely.
Fantastic. Play a little bit for us. Let's see what I'm talking about. So you can definitely hear that lower end, that you want to scream over it. It's like that lower end, that hardcore metal sound, but you're getting it with one guitar. You're not having to depend on the bass. You're not having to depend on the other lead guitarist. You're playing all the rhythm there. You're playing some of the leads down in the higher register as well. So it's all in one guitar. It's freaking awesome. And that leads me to what I want to talk about next, which is the way that you produce your music, because it sounds like there's a whole band. Is it a whole band that's playing on that record?
No. I played the guitars and I programmed the bass and the drums.
Wow. So yeah, that's so when I went to like look at your website and look at all the links and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, where's the other guys? Because I hear this masterpiece of metal that's on this like Steve Vai metal thing that's happening on your record, and the band, by the way, what's it called?
Gn0sis.
Gn0sis with a 0 in the middle, not with the O, a 0 in the middle. So it's kind of hard to find. You're gonna have trouble to find that. How do you spell it?
Gn0sis. Of course, with the 0. Yeah.
But the O's a 0. So look up that on Spotify. Gn0sis, but the O is a 0. Make sure you look that up. The sound is a full-on like metal experience, but it can take. Here's how I want to describe this, because this is what happens when I listen to your music, and this is what I'm telling you my experience. So I love metal, number one, but I also love to sleep. Those are the two things I like in life. So I can like if I'm listening to like Megadeth, or if I'm listening to Metallica, or if I'm listening to some thrash metal, or if I'm listening to Slipknot, I cannot easily just like relax, right? I'm pretty much just ready to slam dance all night long. Right? With your music, I can listen to there's this metal and there's this killer like spaciness to it, is how I want to describe it. I don't know why, but there's this killer spaciness to it where I can relax and listen to metal. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, totally. One thing I like to describe my own music as is progressive. So I don't always choose to, just have it hammering in your ear the whole 5 minutes or whatever it's playing. And so I appreciate that you describe it that way, because I like having different vibes in it. Sometimes being serene, being peaceful or being trippy even.
Nice. Yeah, it does have those elements to it. So and so it gets into the way you record your music. Like, because you do everything, first of all, when he came, here's a great story. He comes up to my door and he just comes with a guitar. Now in my day, when you had a gig, you roll up with not just your guitar, but you have this like half stack amp that you're rolling down the sidewalk, like tuck, 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 and the wheels are like hitting every single piece of the cement down the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. He just rolls up with his guitar. I'm like, where's the amp? He's like, I don't have an amp. He doesn't use amps in his recordings. I happen to have an old amp in my garage. Thank God, an old vintage Marshall amp that I had, number 5, a classic 5. And so we jumped in the car and went to my garage and went and grabbed it, and here we are. But the reason why you don't use an amp is because why?
I play purely digital these days.
Everything these days is digital. So these guitars are able to plug in to a digital interface. The basses, like you said, are able to be programmed. Are the drum programmed as well?
Yeah.
Wow. So everything, you're able to do it yourself. There's no bass player, there's no lead guitar player, there's no drummer, because it sounded like there's a double. I mean, it's all double bass. It's heavy drums. It sounds like there's a freaking professional drummer on there. Is that there's nobody?
Not for the drums or the bass.
Wow. So you're programming all of it.
Yeah. Oh, of course, with the help of friends. I'm not a professional in all those means to any end, but yeah, basically I just sit at my computer for however long it takes. I program, it's kind of like done with MIDI. Oh, okay. And you just put it in a piano roll and it plays the toms, it plays the kick, the snare, whatever you want it to.
Wow. So you're just lining it up like
right.
Each one to make it boom, boom, I don't know how you do it, but yeah, that's freaking crazy. That's insane because it sounds like a full-on band. And like you said, because I seen a story of yours where it had the screen and it had unlimited tracks. I had Austin on the show the other day. He's an engineer for many metal bands, and he's an engineer for Forgotten Legion. I had him on the show, and we were talking about how it's limitless. Like, you can have unlimited tracks until your memory runs out. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So you have all these unlimited tracks, and with a 5-piece band, you maybe have like 3 or 4 mics on the drums. You have a mic on the guitars. You have a mic for the vocals. You're not even thinking that way because you're like, I can put my guitar in there. I can create bass lines. I can create drum lines. And on top of that, you have these elements of, like you said, how did you describe it? It was like these elements of like, what was it you said?
Like the serene kind of trippy synths and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have these elements that you can do, these serene elements, these ambiance pieces that bring in this. It's endless. So that's where I think that spaciness comes from. Mm-hmm. When I was talking about the spaciness of it, it's like metal meets Steve Vai, and then they jump on a Jimi Hendrix's bus and they take a drive to Woodstock. I don't know what it is, but it sounds like this killer stuff, and it's just a mixture of, I don't know, it's like what or where maybe metal needed to go. Do you think so?
I don't know. It's definitely where things needed to go for musicians. Because now anyone can pick up a guitar, and if they just put enough time into it, they can put out stuff that sounds just as good as professional records did 20 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. That's another thing is, when I was playing music, I had the little 4-track like I do here with the podcast, and I would have to record, with this little machine, and hopefully it came out good. Hopefully I could catch the beat in the right place when I came back with the drums. Hopefully I can catch the right spot when it came back with the bass. Now they've got clip tracks. They've got tracks on the screen. You can match everything up. It makes it not only easier, but it also the quality of sound is much better. Is that the case?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Yeah. So the quality of sound is easier. You can add more stuff to it. You have unlimited tracks. and so you just continue to. I mean, there's no limit, right?
It's getting to that point. The limit is however much time you're willing to put into it or not put into it.
That's crazy. So how often do you come out with? I saw it was like is there an album called Protege or what was it called?
It's called Pro Terra.
Pro Terra, and that's is it an LP?
It's an EP, so it's just 6 songs.
Okay.
Not a full album will come later.
Nice. So 6-song EP on Spotify, and is it on Apple Play as well?
Yeah, I believe it's on Apple Play as well.
Awesome, cool. So you have 6 songs on Spotify. So did you come out with how long, or did all those songs come into maybe how long did it take you to write all those songs?
Ooh, maybe 2 years.
2 years.
I wrote it all by myself, so I just spent time after work just developing it.
Nice. What do you generally, obviously for you, you're a guitar player, so generally you probably start to develop. Talk about your writing process. How does it start? Obviously, I'm just thinking your guitarist probably starts with the guitar lick, right?
You would think so, but sometimes no. It could start with a bass line or a drum roll or whatever. For me, writing music, my biggest influence beyond rock and roll bands or whatever I used to listen to is movie scores.
Oh,
so for
nice.
me, my music comes a lot from a place of what is the story I want to tell with this sound.
Oh, crazy.
And so it can, to that end, whatever the song is, it can start wherever the vibe I'm feeling is. So it could be drums, it could be bass, it could be a synth line, you know what I mean? So it starts wherever.
That's pretty awesome, because that's what happens oftentimes when you're in a studio with a bunch of musicians and you're in the writing process. A drummer could throw a roll and you're like, whoa, that could be in this song. The guitar starts writing, or a lead guitar player plays a little lick and you're like, whoa, and then or the singer has some words. Those kind of organic things that happen in a studio are actually happening with just you and some equipment, right?
Yeah, basically.
That's awesome. So it's you still get that kind of organic thing happening, but you don't have to worry about Jimmy showing up late, right? You don't got to worry about Tim's fighting with his wife in the parking lot, and James forgot to pay the guy for the studio, so we're getting kicked out right now. All those things we used to have to worry about back in the day.
Yep. Actually, the main thing about Gn0sis and me being a solo act is the fact that it's just me. I rely on myself. Whatever it takes, I do it on my time. I do it on my pace, on my dime. You know what I mean? All of it, just me. And that's how I like it, because I've dealt with musicians before. One, it's hard to find people who are genuinely committed. One, because, whether it be everyone's got their life, right?
Yeah.
Things are always going on. And some people are just all talk. I've seen that a million times.
Yeah.
And this isn't the only band I'm a part of. I'm in another band called Project Wormhole.
Oh,
and,
yeah?
We have our fun writing music and stuff, but...
That band is with people? Or other people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's a 3-piece.
3-piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Wormhole?
Project Wormhole.
Project Wormhole. Is it on Spotify too?
That's right. Yeah, you could look it up. Our album, we dropped that in 2018. It's called Time Beings.
Whoa, that's cool. Project Wormhole. I'm gonna write that down and check that out. Project Wormhole. That's awesome. So you have that project going, so you get to have that experience. How did this work out? Okay, we were talking earlier about 2018, 2019. You're jamming. At that time, were you playing with Project Wormhole? Were you touring with the Gn0sis thing? What project were you actually jamming? Like when you were getting gigs in those times at that time?
So I've been playing with Project Wormhole since 2014, I think, and we've played shows. Keep it mainly to Southern California, and the other members of that band started doing a side project, and so when things started slowing down with Project Wormhole, that's when I saw the opportunity to shift some focus onto my own project to, kind of fulfill the itch of just doing things that I wanted to do.
Nice.
that wouldn't always fit the vision of Project Wormhole.
Sure, yeah. I mean, they have a certain sound that they're creating as a team, but you're a creator. You're an artist that write your own music, so I'm sure you're itching to like get your own stuff out there, right?
Exactly. I always had ideas, and Gn0sis is definitely a vessel for me to just do whatever the hell I feel like doing.
That's awesome. And then what happens? You're playing around 2019, you're getting into 2020, March 2020, of course, like everybody else, COVID hits. And I think this type of situation, the way you create music, how you write the music, the tools you use for creating music, does it in 2022 enhance the need for this type of writing quality?
It just kind of reinforced my process already, because the stuff I was doing in 2020, 2021 was stuff I was already doing in 2018, 2019. It just, it did allow me to put way more focus into just Gn0sis instead of anything else.
That's awesome. Did anybody see you, or I don't know if you posted, or did anybody start to notice, maybe there are people that do this, but I don't see them that often. Like, did anybody start to see you doing this? You're doing everything by yourself. You're doing the guitars. That's of course something in the rap in the rap genre. We see that all the time. Everybody's dropping beats. Or a guy writes music. You got to drop beats. We do everything in the studio, but you don't hear so much of that in metal or in this type of genre of music. Did people start to see what you're doing and go like, dude, he's making his own beats. He's making his own bass. He's making his own guitar links, and he's doing it all at home on a computer. Did anybody start to notice what you're doing?
I've had a couple of friends or people who are now friends, they were strangers at the time, reach out and tell me like that. There's been maybe 2 or 3 people I can think of off the top of my head who have straight up told me like seeing what I do inspired them to get back on their own projects really hard. And so when you hear something like that, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so how did you feel though? Like when you came into 2020 and you were already doing it in 2018, 19, how did you feel, or did you not feel anything? Because most people most musicians like that were like, dude, we can't play anywhere anymore. We can't do any club gigs anymore. We can't do the arenas anymore. For you, was it like, oh, we're just another day? Or how was it for you?
So shows did start slowing down before the pandemic even started. And given that it was in around 2018 where things slowed down with Project Wormhole, the limitation of not being able to play shows wasn't like, it didn't hit me as hard as it hit some of my friends. I know some people really suffered because that was their bread and butter.
Yeah.
For me, I was fortunate enough to just kind of be like, doesn't affect me, and then I just put my head down and got back to work.
So what happened to you, and it was normal for you, for everybody else, they had a learning curve, right?
Definitely.
They had to try to figure it out. You just kept on trucking.
Yeah, exactly. It sucked to see my friends go through it, but it was some pretty cool pivots happened out of that.
That's exactly it. Pivot is the word. It's the word that happened to many businesses had to pivot. Many restaurants had to figure out how to use DoorDash. You already had figured out how to use your own digital interfaces to create this music. I had to start doing classes on Zoom. Everything changed in that era. After we start moving out in the era, I'm still doing Zoom classes. Restaurants are still using DoorDash, even though the pandemic is somewhat over or whatnot, whoever, depending on what line you follow. But you start to gig, don't you, with your own? How do you because you have this music? How do you gig with this setup?
Oh, I don't gig.
Oh, you don't gig at all?
Not with Gn0sis, no.
Oh, okay.
No, we're with Project Wormhole. We're gearing up to gig again now that the shows are back on. Like you said, it depends on what you follow, if the pandemic's over or not. But shows are definitely starting to come up again, and so that'll be in my future for sure. But with Gn0sis, given that it's just me, I can't play a whole set, and I'm not the kind of person who's just gonna put backing tracks and play to that on a stage.
I was gonna say you're not gonna do like they do in Venice Beach, like walk around with a speaker on your belt and roller skates and roll down the street and play yourself. You don't want to do that.
Nah, that's not my style. As cool as it is to see those guys, I'm just a viewer in that sense.
Wow, that's awesome. So So you can't gig, but in this digital era, you almost don't have to, right? People listen to music on Spotify, they listen on iTunes in their car, and that's how they discover you, right?
Yeah, exactly. With my music, I put a heavier focus on putting out higher quality videos of like playthroughs and just like music videos in general.
Wait a minute, hold on here. You have videos to this music?
Yeah.
So I gotta see these. So give me an example, like for Protege, or what was that song called?
It's a Pro Terra, and that one actually does have a video.
So what's in the video? Is it just you? Is it a chick in a car? What's going on in the video?
No, it's okay, so it's not my best video, but it's of me. I filmed it in front of a green screen, and I just placed myself in some weird sci-fi planet looking stuff with like a crazy black hole in the back.
That's perfect, because that's the style of music like you play. That's awesome. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So are you filming this yourself? Do you have a film crew?
I have the bass player in Project Wormhole. He does a lot of photography and film stuff. So when I needed to, I shoot him a couple $100 and he helps me shoot a video.
So they come out quality then.
Some of them do. Some better than others. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you could do the whole music production yourself, create the songs, and then shoot your own videos. Where can we see these videos at?
They're on YouTube and my Instagram.
So is it the Gn0sis YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. On the Gn0sis thing. Let's see what else I have. So there's no members. That was one of my questions. There's no members of the band. You're doing all this stuff by yourself. You're making videos. That's freaking awesome. Are people starting to? I mean, are you getting a big like interest? Like, are you getting a lot of hits? Are you getting a lot of plays on Spotify?
When I dropped the EP last year, I wouldn't say a big following, but a nice little strong following came of it.
Nice. Are you looking forward to getting out there and playing again with the Wormhole guys?
Yeah, no, it'd be nice to get back on a stage. It's
Nice.
been long enough.
There's something different, right? There's something different about being in a studio, moving tracks forward and backwards, and being by yourself and creating music. And then there's the feeling of being on stage. Talk about the difference between those two things.
If I'm being honest, the whole Gn0sis thing, I guess if it's a little bit of feeding the ego, just accomplishing it all by yourself. At the end, you have this really dope track, and you're like, I did that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
As far as playing live, every time I go to band practice, which we still actively do, it's unwinding. It's like getting away from the regular hustle of life, daily life. You forget about your job, you forget about the home life, everything like that. And then on stage, there's something really fun about nailing a song when you guys are all locked in. You know what I mean?
Nice.
That's a totally different feeling than whatever it is I do with Gn0sis at home by myself.
Yeah. So there's that killer live feel, the playing in front of the audience, everybody locking in, doing it with, playing with other members of the group and all being in the same time and being quality live. And then there's that killer thing like we talked about earlier, where you realize like in the studio with the type of tools and software that you have, you can literally do everything by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And again, different feelings, but it depending on what you're after, I would say doing stuff on your own, there's a lot more you can accomplish by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And
because I remember like when I would play, and if people didn't show up, pretty much I'd have to, because I wrote a lot in some of the bands, I wrote a lot of the music, so I pretty much had to depend on a bass player who could play bass. I didn't play bass. I had to wait for the bass player to get there or find a bass player. I'd have to have a drummer. I couldn't play. At that time, there were kind of ways where you can kind of record your own stuff, but it wasn't as easy as it is today. Like the technology just wasn't quite there yet. I mean, we had I don't remember what it was called. It was weird Sonar. I don't know if they still have that these days. Every time,
Sonar Works.
do you remember that?
Sonar Works or something like that?
Sonar, yeah.
Yeah, that's
so every time I mention Sonar, it ages me on the show. I mentioned that to Austin, he's like, what the hell is that? I mentioned it to you, you're like, what the hell is that? So yeah, this is the type of stuff we had back in the day. It was a computer modulator. It was almost like MIDI based, where you could put your guitar in there, you could plug instruments in there, but you can only do it like one at a time unless you had like a separate thing where you plug them all in and then go to the thing. So it wasn't as easy as it is today. And so I remember just being frustrated. Like I couldn't, you know, because if a guitar player decides he doesn't want to play that day, if a bass player decides or doesn't decide, but decided the night before to party so hard that he can't wake up the next day, you're pretty much screwed, right? You can't continue to create. So the way you create, you're able to do everything on your own. So there's a certain type of it's just a good feeling, right? To be able to do everything yourself.
It's really rewarding, because seeing what I've accomplished with Gn0sis in the time that I've been doing it by myself, it just motivates me to keep going, because I've shown myself that I can do it and I can keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, there's nothing stopping you because you have all the tools in wherever your studio's at, right?
Basically.
Yeah, that's awesome. Has anybody started to listen to you? People start listening to you. Has anybody said like hit you up on DM and been like, hey, how do I get the band Gn0sis? Because they don't know it's not a band. Has anybody said like, hey, how do I get the band Gn0sis to play at my quinceañera? Have you had that happen?
Maybe 1 or 2 times, yeah, and then I have to tell them like, I don't play live, not with Gn0sis at least.
That's crazy. It's like, dude, because they don't know it's not a band, right?
Most people assume that it's a full band, and I don't ever correct them on that unless they're asking me to like play a show. I'm just like, you can think it's a full band.
That's pretty awesome. That's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
That is awesome, man. Well, thank you for spending the time with me, Roger Jr. I appreciate you, my brother. Keep rocking. You can find Roger Jr.'s music, Gn0sis, on Spotify and iTunes. You can find his YouTube channel, Gn0sis, on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you spell it with the 0. Check out Roger Jr. on the guitar with Gn0sis and the Wormhole Band. What's the Wormhole Band called?
Project Wormhole.
Project Wormhole, coming to you live this summer, 2022, with this man on guitar, 8-string guitar. Did you put that guitar on stage?
Yes, I did.
Awesome. So he's playing heavy all summer long with Roger Jr. Guys, thank you for listening to this show. Thank you for those of you who have sponsored me on the show as well. A lot of people hitting the support button there on the feed, and it's been great. It's been awesome. Hit the support channel. You can sponsor us for as little as $1 a month, and we will see you soon. Have a great one.